She lived where stars went to die. The outpost was pressed into the side of a crater like a metal tick on a frozen beast, its solar panels forever pointed toward a sun that didn't rise anymore. It was the edge of the known systems, beyond the glow belt, where navigational satellites refused to orbit and automated ships developed mysterious personality quirks before spiraling off course or into madness. She preferred it that way. No visitors, no eyes, no mirrors. Surya adjusted the thermal flow on the main power core, the spanner vibrating in her hand as frost chipped from the control panel. The core coughed, an indignant rattle that sounded like a geriatric droid clearing its throat, and resumed its sluggish hum. She stepped back, brushing ice crystals from her sleeve. One of her ears twitched instinctively at the sound of approaching footsteps, only to remember once again that she was alone. The Echo belonged to Hux 7, her maintenance droid, whose sense of timing was roughly equivalent to a drunken platypus on stilts. "Your efficiency rating has dropped by 1.2%, mistress," Hux 7 declared, waddling in with his usual lopsided gait and a frying pan inexplicably strapped to his back. "I blame emotional inertia and insufficient protein intake." "Thanks, Hux. Nothing motivates me like unsolicited data about my own incompetence. Also, I burned breakfast. Again." "You burned paste? It takes talent." She sighed and wiped her gloves on her tunic. Even in exile, sarcasm was a constant companion. Shreya didn't have mirrors in the outpost. Not anymore. She had ripped the last one off the wall with a moment's irrational rage some years ago and flung it out the airlock. Its fragments were probably still orbiting the moonlet somewhere, glittering in defiance. Her reflection had always betrayed her. Not monstrous, just wrong. Her ears were too long, her skin lacked the nacreous sheen of the other Lyari, and her features were subtly out of sync with the soft, symmetrical elegance of her kin. She looked human almost, a comparison she hated and clung to in equal measure. The Lyarae were a species of refinement, of grace and harmonic symmetry, and while they never said it outright, there were whispers, quiet, slicing things, about birth flaws and genetic misalignments. Surya had tried once to wear the chromatic cloaks and facial symmetries of her people, but even the colors didn't hold on her. Even light seemed confused by her. So she came here, purchased a decommissioned scientific station that once monitored tectonic microbursts, converted it into a livable shell, and disconnected every comm frequency except for emergency transmissions. And still, every time she adjusted the thermal vents or cataloged rock formations for the Planetary Council's database, she felt like she was apologizing to the universe for taking up space. "Temperature drop expected in Sector 3, HUX announced, rotating his visual module in a full circle before beeping in satisfaction. "Shall I begin Operation Blanket Barricade?" "That was one time," she groaned. "One time I asked for extra insulation, and now you think it's a tactical maneuver." "I have labeled it as such in my logs. The Great Blanket Offensive of year 173. Shreya didn't laugh, but her mouth tilted slightly. Just enough for HX to register it and file it under semi-positive emotional feedback. He trundled off humming an old Terran tune he had picked up from a corrupted data file. Something about walking on sunshine, which given their setting was at best ironic and at worst criminally optimistic. She returned to the viewport overlooking the crater's rim. The planet, no, Moonlet, was a hostile sphere of methane ice and jagged terrain, orbiting a gas giant that bloomed in amber swirls above. Beautiful in a way, desolate in a very definitive way. Shreya pressed her fingers against the cold glass and let her breath fog it. Then something pinged. Not the usual temperature fluctuation alert. Not the daily passive-aggressive reminder from the central AI about missed maintenance reports. This ping was sharp, urgent, unexpected. A foreign object had entered the system. She blinked and turned to the console, where a red indicator blinked like an accusing eye. An escape pod. Rough trajectory suggested its ejection from a larger vessel just outside the orbital perimeter. No transponder, no signal. It was falling. Shreya cursed under her breath and activated the scanner array. The pod's heat signature barely registered through the atmospheric drag. At this rate, it would crash a few clicks beyond the crater, possibly disintegrate, probably kill its occupant if it had one. The sensible thing would be to let it. Interference risk, contamination protocols, emotional entanglements she wasn't ready for. She stared at the blinking dot. She stared harder. "Oh no," she muttered. "I'm about to do something incredibly stupid." 15 minutes later, the outpost's hover sled sputtered into motion with a cough of exhaust and a tragic honk from its damaged stabilization thrusters. Chucks rode behind her, bundled in a ridiculous thermal cloak 2 sizes too big, holding a fire extinguisher, just in case. "I still think this qualifies as illogical behavior," the droid called over the wind. "The likelihood of this being a trap is statistically insignificant, but non-zero. That makes it uncomfortable." "Comfort is a myth," Surya replied grimly, squinting at the jagged horizon. They found the pod half buried in a bank of methane frost, smoke hissing from its joints. The hull was scorched, its insignia erased by entry friction. With a groan of effort and a very undignified squeak, she pried the hatch open. Steam billowed out. Inside, slumped against the seat, was a man, a human man. She stared. He groaned. Then he opened one eye, blinked blearily at her silhouette framed by white light and swirling smoke, and said with utter sincerity, "Is this heaven, or are you just really tall?" She blinked. He winced. "Also possibly concussed. Do tall angel aliens usually have really long ears?" Sriya narrowed her eyes. "I mean that in a good way," he added hastily, and passed out with a dramatic flop. "Well," she said to herself, dragging him out by the shoulders, "this is going to go perfectly fine and not be complicated at all." Hux peered over her shoulder. "He smells like salted starch snacks and bad decisions." "Perfect. He'll fit right in." The human snored, loudly. He was sprawled across Surya's med bunk like an upended scarecrow, one leg dangling off the edge, an arm draped dramatically over his forehead. The blanket she'd placed on him, standard issue thermal mesh, was crumpled at his feet, kicked off in a fit of restless unconsciousness. His boots, still dusted with frozen methane from the crash site, were leaving wet trails across the floor. QX7 made a displeased noise each time the moisture crossed the sterile line between sleeping quarters and equipment bay. "I estimate a 72% probability that he will soil every corner of the facility within the hour," the droid said with grim finality, standing beside the bunk with his ocular array blinking disapproval. "Humans leak." "It's in their nature," Sriya murmured, crouched beside the control console as she reviewed the pod's data logs. Most of them were corrupted or lost, but a few key snippets painted a picture that didn't quite align. Registered civilian, Terran Federation. Name, Milo Gant. Occupation, freelance surveyor/astrotourist, which was a category she didn't even know existed. Launched from a mid-tier pleasure cruiser orbiting Epsilon 12. Ejected from the vessel during a mutual misunderstanding with the onboard AI. That part caught her attention. She glanced back at the man. The snoring had subsided into a kind of rhythmic wheeze. One of his fingers twitched. There was a smear of synth cheese across his jacket. "What sort of misunderstanding gets you thrown out of a luxury ship mid-void?" she muttered. According to Terran records, attempting to reprogram a cruise AI to produce dramatically timed storm effects during karaoke night is considered both a safety risk and an artistic offense, HUX replied helpfully. Surya blinked. "That sounds oddly specific." "I searched his name. There are forums. He has fans." Milo groaned and rolled over, eyes fluttering open. He stared at the ceiling for a long moment, then at Surya, and then her ears. "You're real," he said, voice raspy. "Not a dream, not a fever hallucination. I didn't imagine the ice princess with elf ears." She frowned. "I'm neither icy nor a princess." "Well, you dragged me out of a crash and didn't harvest my kidneys. That's a pretty regal start." She stood slowly, dusting her hands on her tunic. "Your kidneys weren't the valuable part." His eyes widened, a beat of silence. Then she added, "That was a joke." "Ah, right, alien humor, dry as Martian toast." He sat up with a grunt, rubbing the back of his neck. "Where exactly am I?" Sriya folded her arms. "Outer ring of the Virelin expanse. Moonlet D7. Technically uninhabited. Officially forgotten. He squinted. Sounds scenic. It's not. Oh, good. I was worried I'd landed in paradise by mistake. He glanced around the room. Though your interior decor could use a splash of color, maybe a lava lamp. We don't allow open flames. They're not, never mind. Shreya turned away, moving to the console again, but she could feel his gaze linger. Most people, when they looked at her, fixated on the oddities. The way her ears curved too long, tapering nearly to her shoulders. The way her skin seemed to shimmer, then go dull depending on the light. The small asymmetries. He wasn't staring with revulsion or curiosity. He was just looking, like someone seeing a thing they didn't understand but weren't afraid to like anyway. I'm not what you think I am, she said, not quite meaning to speak aloud. He tilted his head. What do I think you are? She hesitated. Beautiful. The word hung there. She hadn't meant it. Not really. It was the word others had once mocked her with, sneered under breath, used to slice under the guise of kindness. She expected laughter, or awkwardness, or a polite, evasive silence. Instead, Milo blinked, then grinned. Well, you are. Obviously. A chill passed through the room. Not metaphorical. The temperature sensors beeped an alert as the ambient warmth dropped 3 degrees. Chex made an urgent warning tone and scuttled toward the regulator panel. I said something wrong again, didn't I? Milo asked cautiously, watching frost gather on the nearest console. Shreya's jaw was clenched. Her breath was visible. Tiny particles of light, barely perceptible, were dancing around her temples, like static caught in gravitational hesitation. She said nothing, just closed her eyes and exhaled. The frost receded. I'm fine, she said tightly. It's a quirk. Bioenergy fluctuations. From compliments, she turned sharply. From stress, he raised his hands. Hey, no judgment. I once caused a gravity inversion by sneezing near a magnetic core. We all have our issues. She almost smiled. Almost. Later, while Milo slept again, in a slightly more dignified position at least, Shreya stood alone in the generator chamber, staring at the diagnostics. Her internal systems were behaving strangely, resonance frequencies fluctuating, microscopic shifts in her biosignature. The sensors kept misidentifying her as unclassified hybrid, potential precursor variant. She tapped the panel, then hit it. Nothing changed. In the background, HUX rolled up beside her. You're leaking light again, he said conversationally. She looked down at her arm. The skin shimmered, opalescent and pulsing faintly with a rhythm that wasn't hers. Not entirely. Not anymore. I've never done this before, she murmured. You've never had anyone call you beautiful without it hurting. Shreya didn't answer. She just watched the shimmer fade and wondered what else had been dormant inside her all these years. In the next room, Milo snored again, loud enough to shake a panel loose. Definitely human, HUX sighed. Shreya had never cooked breakfast for another being before. Well, unless you counted the time she accidentally synthesized a nutrient loaf that developed self-awareness and tried to unionize with the hydroponic algae. That loaf had eventually been outwitted by HUX, who distracted it with a logic paradox and fed it to the waste incinerator with ceremonial solemnity. But Milo was different, human, chatty, chronically unsupervised. Is this edible? He asked, poking at the pale wedge of protein slab steaming on his plate. It's nutrient complete, and technically food, Shreya replied, setting her own portion on the table with a kind of resigned precision. Taste is optional, I guess? Optional, discouraged, occasionally a threat. Milo took a brave bite, chewed, swallowed with effort. Well, he said hoarsely, my tongue's still functioning, so that's a win. HUX trundled past carrying a bucket labeled, in case of flavor emergency. Plan B, Milo muttered, eyes following the droid with suspicion. They sat in the outpost's main common room, which was a generous term for a chamber barely larger than a ship's galley, and decorated in a style best described as institutional beige meets cryogenic chic. Pipes lined the ceiling like disinterested snakes. The table wobbled. The chairs, salvaged from a retired mining rig, creaked with every motion. Milo looked bizarrely comfortable in it all, as if he'd always belonged in cold places with flickering lights and aliens who cooked things that might be alive. "So," he said between cautious nibbles, "is this the part where you interrogate me about my mysterious past and ulterior motives? I already read your files." "Oh no, my karaoke videos." Regrettably, he winced. The Moonlight rendition of Toxic was a bold creative choice. It was a cultural crime. She sipped something approximating tea. It tasted like boiled moss in interstellar regret. Milo stretched, glanced out the viewport, and let out a low whistle. The horizon was still a jagged wasteland of frost and rock, but the distant glow of the gas giant painted it gold and green, like spilled sunlight on shattered glass. He leaned forward, face lit by the display. "Okay, real talk. This place is incredible. I mean, sure, death by frostbite is like 90% likely, but it's the kind of cold that makes you feel things. Existential dread, appreciation for working nostrils, that sort of thing." Shreya raised a brow. "You sound disturbingly enthusiastic." "It's my thing," he said with a shrug. Milo Gaunt, enthusiastically hurtling toward bad ideas since age 7. But this place, it's honest. You don't get that a lot anymore." She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then tapped his fork on the plate. "Most of the galaxy's all polish and plastic now. Corporate colonies, sanitized terraforms, curated environments. You breathe filtered air, eat lab-grown nostalgia, and pretend it's real. But this," he gestured at the frost-covered walls, "this doesn't care if you're having a good day. You survive it or you don't. It's kind of beautiful." Shreya's ears twitched. She rose, walked to the far wall, and tapped in a command. A section of metal hissed open, revealing a long, unused terminal, covered in frost, cables coiled like sleeping serpents. She hesitated, then handed him a pair of gloves. "Come on." He followed, curiosity painted across his face. They descended into the lower levels of the outpost, into what had once been the geology lab before Shreya gutted it for parts. Now it was half storage, half tomb. Equipment older than the last war slumped in corners. Sample jars sat like forgotten thoughts. In the center stood an old planetary scanner, still functional, barely, its interface glowing faintly as they approached. "I've been mapping the moonlet," she said. "Part hobby, part contract. The Planetary Council pays for data on tectonic activity and atmospheric anomalies. Keeps them informed about potential mining sites or dangerous shifts." Milo touched the display, watching the hologram ripple with geological overlays and pressure readings. "This is amazing, but there's more, isn't there?" Shreya nodded slowly. "There's something under the ice. I don't know what yet. The scanner picks up fluctuations, resonant pulses, like something sleeping." He blinked. "You've got a buried alien mystery and you didn't tell me immediately?" "I don't usually entertain visitors." "Well, you do now. I'm entertained. Thoroughly." She narrowed her eyes. "You're not helping." "I can try not helping louder." He leaned in, eyes dancing with wonder. "How deep?" 37 kilometers beneath a glacial shelf. No known structures, no prior settlements, but something's active. Like alive active? Or mechanical? Or residual energy from something ancient? I don't know yet. Milo's grin was immediate. "So, when do we go poking it with a stick?" She gave him a flat look. "That's the worst possible phrasing, but the best possible plan." Before she could reply, the terminal flickered. A new signal. Faint, rhythmic, not random, a pattern. Shreya froze. "That's new," she said softly. The waveform pulsed across the screen. Not communication, not quite, but deliberate, like sonar. A ping, a call. Milo whispered, "It's saying hello." She stared at the screen, then at him. "Or," he added helpfully, "it's saying run." Upstairs, HUX beeped an alert. "Incoming transmission, unauthorized frequency." Shreya bolted up the ladder, Milo following. At the main console, the signal was already unfolding, static layered with tonal modulations. It wasn't coming from the buried object. It was coming from orbit. From a Lyari vessel. Her people. She stood motionless as the identifier code resolved. Vessel, Narentha. Purpose, retrieval. Target, Sriya Ven. Her blood turned to ice. Oh boy, Milo muttered. This is about to get very dramatic, isn't it? She didn't answer. Outside in the sky, a shadow moved. Too distant to see, but close enough to feel. Sriya had always imagined the day her people would come for her. Sometimes in the bleary aftermath of nightmares, sometimes in the hollow silence of routine. But she'd pictured it like a formal event, dignified, clinical, inevitable. A retrieval mission by sterile officers with unreadable faces and unreadier hearts. She did not expect a ship called Narentha, which in Lyari meant memory that bites back, to come unannounced, hovering in orbit like a vulture with diplomacy issues. Even Hux sounded nervous. Shall I initiate the pretend we're not home protocol? No point, Sriya muttered, scrolling through the incoming data. They know I'm here. Milo peeked over her shoulder. That's a bit ominous. Is there like a talk first, arrest later tradition in your culture? There's a talk in circles until someone implodes emotionally tradition. So? Families. Exactly. The console flashed a new message, encrypted but not by much. Lyari comms rarely bothered with secrecy when arrogance could suffice. The translation printed itself across the screen. You have been absent long enough. The council requires your return. Resistance will be inefficient. We await your assent. Milo tilted his head. Is that a threat or a guilt trip? With Lyari, there's no difference. She turned away from the terminal and paced, boots whispering across the metal floor. Her long ears twitched in frustration. They think I'm still the same, that I'll come when summoned, bow my head, take the punishment. They think I'm afraid. Milo, lounging nearby with a half-eaten nutrient bar that smelled faintly of petroleum, shrugged. To be fair, you did hide on a frozen rock at the end of the galaxy. Strategic retreat, she snapped. Right, super courageous strategic retreat. She gave him a look. He smiled anyway. And now, he asked. Sriya exhaled through her nose. Now I ignore them. They won't love that. They never did. Just then, the outpost shook. Not violently, but enough for HUX to roll into a wall with a surprise beep and for Milo to drop his bar, which skittered across the floor with more enthusiasm than its flavor deserved. That wasn't me, Milo said quickly, hands up. No, Sriya murmured, eyes narrowing. That came from below. They rushed to the lower scanner bay. The readings pulsed with unfamiliar spikes. The buried object, whatever it was, had reacted. Whether to the Lyra ship's arrival or Sriya's own emotional state, she couldn't be sure. But it was awake now. Milo whistled. You've got fan mail from the sky and something ancient trying to stretch after a few million years. Busy morning. She scanned the waveform. The energy signature had shifted. It was no longer just a pulse. It was harmonizing, matching a frequency, her frequency. That's not possible, she said under her breath. Did you try turning yourself off and on again? I don't have a power button. Everyone has a power button. Mine is flattery and chocolate. She shook her head, distracted. It's reacting to me, like it knows me. Or, Milo said cheerfully, like it thinks you're a remote control. She paused. That might not be wrong. A new alert pinged from above. The Lyari vessel was descending. Sriya looked up, then at Milo. Get to the rover, now. His eyes widened. Wait, we're running from the people in the sky toward the mysterious buried object under the ice? Yes. Fantastic. When I die, please put on my tombstone that I died doing something incredibly stupid. There won't be a tombstone. Perfect, even stupider. They raced across the frozen landscape in the outpost ground rover, a rust-colored beast of a machine built to survive avalanches and minor explosions, which incidentally made it ideal for dating Sriya's luck. The wind howled outside, flinging crystalline shards against the windows like angry bees with no concept of physics. Milo was at the controls, mostly because Sriya didn't want to risk freezing the entire rover with a stray emotional surge. So, he shouted over the engine, you want to tell me what we're driving toward? It's a vault. Ah, great. Containing what? Unknown. Love a good mystery. Any chance it's, like, Treasure or historical records? Maybe a preserved sandwich? Possibly a weapon? He blinked, less enthusiastic now. It predates the current Lyari timeline, built by our precursors, creatures of light and resonance. Their technology wasn't just mechanical, it was sympathetic. As in, emotional? Biometric, mental, energy-based, only responds to those it resonates with. And it resonates with you because… Surya didn't answer right away. Because I'm not entirely Lyari, not as they define it. The rover screeched to a halt as the landscape gave way. Before them stretched a smooth depression in the ice, crystalline and unnaturally symmetrical. At its center, a thin line of light pulsed like a heartbeat. They stepped out into the cold, the air sharp and brittle. The vault responded immediately. The ice receded, curling back like melting glass. A passageway formed. Milo stared. So, either we're invited, or we've just tripped the world's fanciest security system. Surya stepped forward. The air inside the passage was warm. Not artificially, but naturally, like standing in a beam of sunlight that had been stored for eons. The walls glowed faintly, responding to her proximity. Symbols unfurled, etched light flowing like water. She paused. These are precursor glyphs. Do they say anything helpful, like welcome or beware of dragon? She traced one gently. Number, they say, inheritance. Behind them, the sky cracked open with light. The Lyari ship was landing. Milo looked back. We've got company. Let them come, Surya said, stepping deeper into the vault. Brave words from the lady who just lit up an alien tomb with her DNA. I'm improvising. Improvising is how I ended up falling out of a cruise ship. The vault opened further, revealing a chamber like a cathedral made of sound and shimmer. At its center hovered a crystal structure, constantly shifting, singing in frequencies that bypassed the ears and hummed directly in the bones. It pulsed once, toward her. Surya reached out. Her skin flared with light. Outside, the Lyari ship deployed its escort. Inside, something ancient whispered her name. The chamber trembled, not with violence, but with reverence, like the very walls were holding their breath. Light bloomed from the hovering crystal, its glow no longer passive, no longer sleeping. It was awake now, aware, singing. Shreya stood motionless, her outstretched hand still pulsing with strands of energy, threads of color winding up her arm in a slow, deliberate climb. The glyphs on the walls resonated in reply, cascading with meaning in a language older than spoken word. They didn't speak in commands or declarations, but in emotion. Recognition, relief. Okay, Milo said, arms crossed as he stood just outside the luminous threshold. So you're not going to explode. That's great. You're also glowing, which is usually only good news for radioactive rocks or people in musicals. Shreya didn't respond. Her gaze was locked to the crystal, pupils wide, breath shallow. The light around her responded to every beat of her pulse. It knows me, she finally said, her voice low. Let's define knows. Like it recognizes you from an ancient prophecy, or it's your great-great-grandmother's roommate's cousin's soul trapped in a glowing space rock? It's familiarity, she murmured. A kinship. I've never felt it before. Not even among the Illyri. Well, this kinship is about 10 seconds away from permanently giving you a tan, Milo said. Should I be worried, or is this just a fancy alien hug? The crystal shifted, folding inward like an iris closing. With a low harmonic chime, it extended a tendril of light toward the ground, sketching out a symbol, one Shreya instinctively recognized. Not a word, a name. Venara. Her name, but older, ancestral. They didn't just abandon this place, she whispered. They left it for someone, a descendant, a continuation. You, Milo said, stepping in beside her. They left it for you. A tremor echoed through the chamber, deeper than before. Not from the vault, but from the surface. Milo frowned. Let me guess. The mood lighting is less excited about your extended family showing up in orbit. Shreya's expression hardened. They'll try to take me. They'll have to get through the glowing cathedral of sentient crystal and bad decisions first. She turned to him, ears flicking with a mix of tension and gratitude. You don't have to stay. You didn't sign up for any of this. Correction, I crash-landed, insulted your cooking, flirted with your droid, and touched ancient technology I definitely shouldn't have. At this point, I think the universe would be disappointed if I left. The tremors stopped. A new sound entered the chamber, a filtered, sterile voice. Shriya Ven, this is the Narentha. You are in possession of unauthorized relic-class technology. You will comply. Milo raised a brow. They sound charming. She didn't answer. Her fingers curled into fists. Then the vault responded, not with violence, but with motion. The walls shifted, folding open to reveal hidden alcoves. Machinery unfolded silently. Armatures, panels, glowing constructs that hovered of their own accord. The entire chamber was alive with preparation. It's defending itself, Shriya said. Or arming itself, Milo muttered. One of the constructs hovered near him. It looked like a mechanical jellyfish crossed with a plasma lantern. He backed up a step, hands raised. Listen, I'm flattered, but I'm in a committed relationship with sarcasm and caffeine. The construct beeped once, scanned him, then zipped off. Outside, the ground cracked. Shriya and Milo raced up the icy tunnel as the vault shifted behind them, sealing itself with a gentle hum, like a giant exhaling. The moment they reached the surface, they saw the Narentha's escort squad, sleek atmospheric skiffs slicing through the sky, leaving contrails like surgical scars. And at the center of it all, descending like an accusation, was the shuttle. Is there a plan? Milo asked. Yes. Does it involve diplomacy? No, he grinned. Knew I liked you. The shuttle touched down with a hiss of steam and light. Its hatch opened with the ceremonial stiffness of a courtroom. From it emerged 3 Lyari envoys, cloaked in formal garb, their long ears pierced with insignia. They looked identical, like bureaucrats printed from the same disapproval mold. The lead envoy stepped forward. Shriya Ven, you are hereby ordered to return to Lyari space for evaluation. Your contact with precursor artifacts constitutes a breach of Preservation Edict 014. I wasn't aware my exile came with return clauses, she said evenly. You were never exiled, you left. There is a distinction. Behind her, the wind whistled like a snickering ghost. Milo whispered, These guys are fun at parties, huh? The envoy ignored him. You are disrupting a timeline of quiet containment, the Lyari said. That vault predates our civilization. It was to remain undisturbed. Shriya's eyes narrowed. Why? Because the truth breaks things. Milo blinked. Wow. Is that printed on your business cards? The second envoy stepped forward. You must understand, your condition is no longer just a genetic curiosity. You are now a variable, an unknown. We cannot allow that. Shriya laughed once, sharp and small. You fear what you didn't plan for. We fear collapse. Of what? Your empire or your illusion of control? The ground trembled again, but this time only beneath the Lyari. From the frozen earth, spires of crystal rose, slowly, silently. Not weapons, not threats. Just presence, witnesses. The vault was watching. The envoy stiffened. Milo leaned over. Okay, maybe now we start planning escape routes. Shriya took a step forward, light still dancing faintly beneath her skin. I am not what you thought. I never was. And now I am more. You don't get to contain that. The lead envoy hesitated. For the first time, there was uncertainty on his face. This isn't over, he said. No, Shriya replied. It's only just begun. The Lyari turned back to their shuttle. The skiffs pulled away like startled birds. Within moments, they were gone, leaving only silence and the scent of scorched frost. Milo exhaled. So, what now? She looked at the vault, at the sky, then at him. We learn, she said. He grinned. And maybe eat something that doesn't try to file a lawsuit against my taste buds? Don't push your luck. Night didn't fall on this planet so much as slide in sideways. The sky melted from pale gold to bruised indigo, streaked with clouds that shimmered faintly with magnetic particles, like some distant deity had tossed glitter across the firmament in a fit of boredom. The vault pulsed quietly beneath the surface, like a heart beating under ice. And in the outpost, a pot of something aggressively purple was bubbling on the stove. "This isn't food," Milo said, holding up a spoon and watching the goo slide off in slow defiance of gravity. "This is a science experiment that has gained sentience and now demands rights." Shreya didn't look up from the display terminal. "It's rich in protein and vitamin clusters. The Lyari used to eat it during expeditions. It kept us alive." "Kept you alive by scaring off predators with the smell?" She gave him a look over her shoulder. "You survived 6 days on ration packs that tasted like recycled sock lint. You don't get to complain." He sniffed the pot again, winced, then shrugged. "Okay, fair." The tension from earlier had ebbed, but it wasn't gone. The Lyari ship had retreated for now, but the unspoken threat of its return hung in the air like uncharged static. And beneath the snow, the vault waited, quiet, enigmatic, and impossibly ancient. Shreya could still feel its hum beneath her skin, a resonance that made her bones feel like tuning forks. She turned back to the terminal. The scans they'd pulled from the vault systems were confusing. Not in their complexity, Milo had called them a PowerPoint presentation delivered by ghosts, but in what they revealed, that the vault was not merely a storage site or temple. It was interactive, adaptive, a thinking construct built on principles of symbiotic technology meant to respond to specific genetic patterns, patterns that had nearly vanished from the Lyari genome. Except for her, Venara, not just her name, but perhaps a designation, a role, a key. And the vault had opened to her like a forgotten melody to the right voice. Milo wandered over, still chewing with what could generously be called bravery. So what do we know? That the precursors weren't just builders. They were curators. They seeded sites across the quadrant, designed to awaken only when the time was right, which is apparently right now. Apparently, he pulled up another hologram, a slow rotation of the crystalline matrix at the vault's core. And this is, what? Their version of a diary? It's a construct, self-modifying. It draws power from the surrounding electromagnetic field and from, she hesitated, from me. Milo blinked. You mean literally? She nodded. My biology triggers it, but not just my DNA, my state, emotions, thoughts. It responds to intention, to belief. He stared at her. So it's an ancient alien artifact powered by vibes? She resisted a smile. You could say that. And it likes your vibes, which means you're either destined to unlock the secrets of an ancient civilization, or you're the chosen DJ for a really weird alien dance party. Let's hope it's both. They worked late into the evening, sorting data, feeding language matrices into HUX, trying to decode the glyphs etched along the inner walls of the vault. The translation was slow, nuanced, metaphor-heavy, layered with meaning that shifted depending on the reader's perspective. But certain phrases repeated, like the chorus of a song written across centuries. When the world forgets, memory must awaken. The broken shall become the bridge. Venera must choose. At that, Shreya sat back, rubbing her eyes. It's naming me again, not as a person, more like a function. Milo leaned in. So what's the choice? I don't know yet. Outside, a storm began to whisper across the ice fields, thin sheets of magnetic snow curling against the windows like ghost hands. HUX flickered slightly, adjusting its internal field. Atmospheric instability increasing, the droid chirped helpfully, but no immediate threat detected. Also, your cooking has been flagged as a Category 3 biohazard. Milo patted the console. Jealous, aren't you? HUX beeped in what sounded like mechanical indignation. Later, after the storm settled and the outpost fell into its usual hush, Shreya stood alone outside beneath the stars. The air was thin, sharp with frost, but her skin felt warmer now. Not from the environment, but from within. A lingering charge she couldn't shake, like the vault had left fingerprints on her soul. Milo joined her, his breath fogging. Couldn't sleep? Didn't try. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the vault's surface pulse faintly beneath the snowdrift. I always thought, she said quietly, that being different was a defect. Something broken in me. My ears are longer. My skin is a different hue. My thoughts move sideways. The other Lyari called me a throwback, a corruption of the line. Milo looked at her. But the vault doesn't think that? No, she said. To the vault, I'm not an error. I'm the answer. He smiled. Sometimes it just takes a few million years for the universe to catch up to you. She snorted softly. You always have a joke. It's that or scream into the void. Tempting. He nudged her gently with his shoulder. So what now? I think I need to go back inside. There's more it wants to show me. And you're sure it's not going to melt your brain? Number. But I'm sure I have to try. The stars above flared faintly, caught in the planet's shimmering atmosphere. Somewhere far beyond them, the Lyari watched, planned, worried. She could almost feel their tension, their desperation to contain the unknown. But the unknown wasn't something to fear. Not anymore. It was her. She turned toward the vault, and it opened again. The vault welcomed her, not like a door opening, but like a memory returning, familiar and warm, though layered in strangeness. The crystalline walls shimmered with soft pulses, responding not to movement, but emotion. As Surya stepped inside for the final time, the lights bent toward her, brushing her skin like the touch of old friends rediscovered. Behind her, Milo followed, chewing on a nutrient bar with the suspicious expression of someone trying to determine whether what he was eating was food or packaging. So, he muttered, gesturing at the glowing interior, this is it? The alien enlightenment moment? Do you, ascend now? Turn into pure light? Or does the vault just spit out a free toaster? Surya gave him a wry glance. I'm hoping for answers. A toaster would be nice too, though. The crystal at the heart of the vault waited. It spun slowly, lazily, like a planetary model abandoned in thought. As she approached, the symbols around the chamber shifted, not at random, but in rhythm. They were synchronizing to her heartbeat, a language of pulses, Venara, ready. She placed her hand on the crystal, and the world changed. Not violently, not with a scream or flash. It unfolded, like the layers of a holographic lotus. She saw not images, but understanding, cascading through her mind in a flood of radiant clarity. Histories long buried, voices long silenced. She saw the precursor species, tall and strange and vibrant with bioluminescent patterns, speaking in waves and color. They had not died. They had moved on, leaving behind seeds of memory and machines designed to nurture the rare few who shared their resonance. A legacy, not for domination, but for evolution. They had built the vaults to respond to the future, to those who would inherit not their world, but their questions. You were never meant to be alone, the voice said. Not aloud, but within, a soft chord vibrating along her spine. Difference is not disorder. It is potential. Isolation was your forge. Shreya felt tears slip down her cheeks, silent and hot. Her entire life she had worn her difference like an affliction. Her long ears, her shifting irises, her intuitions, others found unstable. But now she saw the truth. She was not flawed. She was chosen. The light dimmed slowly. The crystal receded, its knowledge imparted, its purpose fulfilled. Milo stepped closer, watching her with the unease of someone who just witnessed someone download several lifetimes of experience into their brain. So, toaster? She laughed softly and wiped her face. Better than a toaster. Microwave oven. A whole new future. He raised his brows. Sounds high maintenance. She turned toward him, her smile calm now, unguarded. You came here by accident, Milo, and stayed when it got dangerous. Well, I'm committed to poor life choices. You stayed for me. He looked uncomfortable. Yeah, well, I figured someone had to make sure you didn't start glowing ominously and demanding worship. I might still do that. Ugh, you'll be unbearable. She stepped forward and took his hand. You helped me see something I couldn't. Not the vault, not the power. Me. You called me beautiful. He shrugged, a little pink in the cheeks. It was true. I didn't know it could be. Their moment was interrupted by Hux, who rolled in with his usual blend of helpfulness and sass. Pardon me, meatbags, but I've finished translating the last glyphs. There appears to be a message left specifically for Shreya, and also, possibly, a self-destruct sequence, or a recipe for lemon pie. Hard to say. Precursor syntax is weird. The message was simple, a lattice of images and meaning coalescing into one final instruction. Leave this place not as the exiled, but as the torchbearer. The signal is yours now. Shreya turned to the console and activated the relay. Far above, in the upper atmosphere, a hidden satellite hummed to life. It began transmitting, not data, but a signal encoded with the vault's presence. A call to others like her, scattered across stars and species. A beacon not of power, but of invitation. She had been the first. She would not be the last. Back at the outpost, Milo packed up their meager supplies while grumbling at HUX about the droid's refusal to help carry anything. You hover. You literally float. I've seen you carry a six-pack of fusion cores. My servos are reserved for tasks of higher intelligence, HUX replied. Lifting your underwear doesn't qualify. Shreya smiled as she stepped inside, the vault behind her now silent, its secrets passed on. We'll need to head to the relay point. The signal will draw attention. Milo slung a pack over his shoulder. Friendly or unfriendly? Both. Well, he said, at least I'll get to use the emergency pie cannon I built. There's no such thing. There is now. The horizon glowed faintly, not with dawn, but with the first light of a world awakened. As they climbed into the old scout skimmer, Shreya paused for one last look at the outpost, the place where she'd hidden, hated herself, starved for silence. Now it stood like a monument to a beginning she never expected. She had been the alien woman who thought she was ugly. Now she was something else. Not a relic, not a mistake, but a bridge between past and future. A voice for the forgotten, a spark in the dark. Milo revved the skimmer. Ready, Vanara? She slid into the seat beside him. Ready. They soared into the sky, leaving behind the cold and the silence and the names others had tried to carve into her. And ahead a galaxy waited,